Thank you for the introduction, Sean. You did pretty much everything on this first slide, so I won't bore anybody with any further details on that. Today I want to talk about just a brief overview of what Iowa Select does for our commitment to environmental care and neighbor relations. One of those main aspects is our partnership with the Coalition to Support Iowa's Farmers. Cover some of our existing methods and technologies we use for odor control and environmental stewardship, and then also our new methods and technologies, primarily the electrostatic fence. So environmental care is one of the four main pillars of Iowa Select Farms that guides everything we do. We have an internal 15-member environmental services team who oversees all of our manure management plans and nutrient applications, keeps us rolling, keeps us legal, and keeps us functioning, and does a very fine job of doing that. We subscribe to the 4R stewardship plan for nutrient application, which is right time, right rate, right place, and right amount. Did I get that right, Keith? Perfect. And then also with using the nutrients from the swine barns to go back and fertilize the fields, to grow the crops, we really help complete that nutrient cycle and really close that nutrient cycle so that what we use to raise the pigs then gets used to raise the next year crops, and on and down the line. Back in May of 2018, we started a partnership with the Coalition to Support Iowa's Farmers to become a green Farmstead partner. So with that, what we committed to is all of our new company-owned finishers will have 3 rows of trees and 1 row of shrubs around the barn to help with odor control, dust control, neighbor relations. The trees were selected with advice from both the Coalition and from Fraser Nursery for their traits that you need for that sort of a windbreak. With the 16 farms, we were able to get trees planted on, which anybody who was trying to dig anytime this fall knows it was a really hard fall to try and get any outside dirt work done. Planted over 1,000 arbor vitaes, 850 dogwoods, and 180 lilacs. And that'll continue and keep moving forward as the year goes on. With that, it's not just on our own finishers. With some contract growers like the Hatlands family here, they're actually buying in as well, and they're installing these tree rows and this electrostatic fence on their own farms as well. So we're really not just managing our own farms, we're also able to branch those technologies out and help contract growers like the Hatlands. So some of the existing methods or technologies, like a lot of folks, we've switched over most of our finishing to wet-dry feeders, which has shown a dramatic decrease in water wastage and manure volume that we have to apply out to the field. We follow all the separation distances as required by Iowa law, do manure injection, and then follow best practices for air, mortality disposal, overall barn management. A lot of the points that if you were in the session first thing this morning on nuisance lawsuits, all those best practices to make sure you're being a good and considerate neighbor. And along with that, something that we maybe don't talk about with environmental stewardship too much is just the continued gains we see in pig productivity and the efficiencies of those pigs. We're producing more pounds of pork with less inputs all the time, and that's good for the environment. So the new methods and technologies we're working on, so the electrostatic fence, which we'll have a couple slides here in a little bit to detail that more for you guys. We're actually working on removing pit fans, moving forward on our barns as another method for odor reduction, and then continuing on with the Green Farmstead program. So this is an example of what our finishers look like this year, or 2018 and moving forward. So we're switching almost exclusively to tunnel ventilated barns, full mechanical ventilation. That allows us to concentrate where our exhaust air is coming out, so we're able to treat it with a technology like the electrostatic fence and the tree lines. So this is an example of a site that we would use, single barn site. You can see all the fans are facing away from the road and will blow directly into our odor and dust mitigation devices. So what this fence looks like in application, so there you can see the bank of fans on the end of the barn. They're all pointed and blowing, and you can see at least one little strand of barbed wire. That won't pop up, but try to get in trouble. So there's 2 strands of barbed wire that run the width of the barn, and that all that exhaust air leaving those fans has to pass between or right around those strands of barbed wire. Those barbed wires are electrified, and I'll hit that in the next slide, how this actually functions. But then we also have the green screen material, which is a 3D plastic geotextile weave fence that was used to capture the dust and slow the air down. So the principle behind it is we have the dust and odor particles leaving the fans of the barn. With the tunnel ventilation, we're concentrating that into one side of the barn, so we're able to apply our technology a lot easier. The 2 strands of barbed wire are charged with a high voltage, low current power source, basically a really high charged electric fencer that puts off electrons off of those points of the barbed wire and creates a big negative charge field that will then impart charges on the particles and molecules as they move through that field. Now when those particles get charged, they get sticky and they want to ground themselves or grab onto something to counteract that charge. And so the fence, being a plastic geotextile, is really good for grabbing negatively charged items and holding on to them. That also, by going through that fence, we get some just plain mechanical filtration. Particles that are too big to fit through the weave get caught and don't transport downstream. Anything that does go through is now dramatically slowed because it went through a big screen, and now it has more time to settle to the ground before it leaves the farm and potentially reaches a neighbor. Additionally, some of the air is directed upward on a chimney effect, which will also reduce downstream odor levels. Probably the most common question we get asked is, how dirty does the fence get and how often do you have to clean it? You can see the fence on the left is relatively new and the fence on the right has probably been running for about 3 months. So they do get dirty, they turn brown, but so far we haven't had to wash them. The rain does a good job in and of itself of cleaning them. So we're anticipating we'll probably rinse them down when we wash the barns down twice a year with the wash crews already there, so there won't be any special trips out to the farm to clean the fence to maintain them. We have done, or just completed a study with Iowa State to try and quantify the actual impact of this fence. So you can see the wooden plenum that they built to direct all of the one fan's airflow through a certain volume so that they can measure what's coming out of that specific fan and then what happens once it goes through our electrostatic fence. They did both bag samples to take back to Iowa State to do a odor sniff panel, and then they also did different dust collection techniques to look at dust levels and particle sizes. So what we found, big picture, is that our odor reduction from the bag samples with trained sniffer panels of people is that we found a 30% reduction in odor from what's coming out of the fan to what's right after the fence. Pretty significant reduction in odor. We also found a 50% reduction in dust from between what's coming out of the fan and what gets through and past the fence. Another very significant reduction. Now when we combine that 30% odor reduction with a 15% reduction in odor from trees, that's a pretty common established number. No pit fans is another 20% reduction in odor leaving the farm. It gives a total reduction of odor of around 50% from these barns. It's very substantial, and I get nothing scientific comments from neighbors or folks around the farms, but just kind of the general thought is people can notice that right around the farm it seems to smell less. So thank you for your attention, and I'll turn it back over to Sean.